You ever sit alone at night, scrolling through numbers that don't quite add up, and feel that quiet, gnawing tension in your chest? Maybe it's your credit card balance. Maybe it's the news about inflation. Maybe it's just a vague sense that everyone else has their life figured out while you're still catching up. You tell yourself it's normal, that everyone struggles with money. But if you care too much about your family, about appearances, about being enough, that quiet tension becomes a constant companion. It whispers that if you fail here, you've failed not just yourself, but everyone who depends on you, even in ways they may not realize. The average person's financial reality is often shocking, but rarely talked about. Statistics show that a large portion of people have less than a few $1,000s in savings. Many live paycheck to paycheck. Some owe tens of thousands in credit cards, car loans, or student debt. For someone who cares too much, these numbers aren't just abstract, they're deeply personal. Every late payment, every missed opportunity to save, every moment of financial insecurity feels like a personal failure, a reflection of your worth. Neuroscience explains why. When you care deeply, your mirror neurons don't just register emotions, they magnify them. You feel others' anxiety, their judgments, their expectations, as if they were your own. Caring too much around money creates a subtle, almost invisible pattern in your life. You plan, overplan, and worry, constantly weighing what you can give versus what you must hold. You overthink financial decisions, not just for yourself, but for everyone connected to your family, friends, colleagues. Behavioral science calls this hyper-responsibility. You assume a level of control that is simply impossible. And yet, when the average person's financial reality is so fragile, it feels like your empathy is both a gift and a curse. You want to help, you want to secure, you want to fix, and every failure of the system feels like a reflection of your own inadequacy. It's even more complicated because society conditions us to measure success in ways that encourage overcaring. Cars, homes, lifestyle choices, even social media personas all become mirrors of worth. When the statistics about average income, debt, and savings hit, they're often framed as warnings or comparisons, not truths. And for someone who overcares, comparisons are electric currents that jolt the nervous system. You begin to internalize not just your own financial tension, but the tension of everyone around you. You take it personally. You worry that if you can't keep up, you're letting people down. And you do it quietly, almost invisibly, because caring too much is silent work. There's a subtle darkness here. Caring too much around money can make small setbacks feel catastrophic. A missed payment, a late bill, an unexpected expense. These aren't just practical problems. They trigger deep emotional circuits that associate scarcity with danger. Your brain treats financial uncertainty the same way it treats physical threat. Cortisol spikes, attention narrows, and your nervous system goes into overdrive. You might overwork, overexplain, oversacrifice, all to regain a sense of control. And yet, this very overcompensation often keeps you trapped in the cycle of stress. You care so much that it feeds itself a loop of anxiety disguised as responsibility. And yet, there's a hidden beauty in this intensity. Your capacity to care means you notice things that others miss. The nuances in a friend's tone, the silent burdens of a partner, the invisible pressures on your family. Applied wisely, this sensitivity allows for compassion, foresight, and connection, but it must be managed. If you don't learn to differentiate between what you must carry and what you can release, that very gift becomes a source of fatigue. The statistics, the average debt, the average savings, the shocking financial fragility, are less about failure and more about context. They reveal the invisible weight carried by everyone, and especially by those who care too much. There's also a cognitive shift that happens when you begin to recognize these patterns. Awareness alone doesn't solve financial insecurity, but it changes the way you experience it. Instead of feeling powerless in the face of numbers, you start to see choices. Behavioral economics calls this the psychology of controlled perception. When people feel they have even small control over their financial future, stress levels drop dramatically. For someone who cares too much, this awareness can be liberating. You begin to see that it's not failure that defines you, but patterns of response, how you manage care, empathy, and responsibility in a system that often undervalues both. And then comes the emotional reckoning. You notice how much of your energy has been spent worrying, preemptively fixing, overgiving, apologizing, just to maintain a fragile sense of security. You grieve the small freedoms you sacrificed. You reflect on moments when overcaring masked your own needs. But simultaneously you feel the quiet pride of endurance. You've carried invisible weight, and you've done so with grace, often without recognition. Your nervous system may be worn, but your capacity for empathy is unbroken, and that is a truth that no statistic can quantify. The key, it turns out, is not to stop caring, it's to redirect it. Caring too much becomes healthy when you begin to allocate energy consciously, when you recognize which responsibilities are yours and which are not, when you care for yourself as fiercely as you care for others. This is the moment when insight becomes liberation. You can acknowledge the shocking money stats, the average debts, the scarcity, the fragile safety nets without letting them define your emotional state. You can navigate them with intention rather than fear. You can exist in the world of numbers without letting it erode the world of feelings inside you, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, something profound emerges. Your empathy transforms from compulsion to choice. You still feel deeply, still notice the pain of others, still care, but now, your care carries wisdom. You set boundaries without guilt. You manage resources without panic. You contribute without self-irritation. The nervous system that once ran on anxiety now begins to run on strategy, reflection, and quiet strength. This is the paradox of caring too much. What feels like vulnerability, when managed with awareness, becomes resilience. By the time you sit back and consider the bigger picture, you begin to see the hidden pattern behind the statistics. The average person struggles, but they're not alone. You, the overcarer, are not weak. You're wired for depth, for connection, for noticing what most miss. And when you pair that wiring with awareness and choice, you transform stress into insight, scarcity into clarity, overcaring into intentional generosity. The numbers are not walls, they are mirrors, reflecting the inner truth of how much we all shoulder silently. And in that quiet reflection, you realize something quietly revolutionary. The world doesn't need you to stop caring. It needs you to care wisely, to care without to notice, to act, to protect, to love on still rests, to navigate money, relationships, and responsibility with awareness, not guilt. And perhaps the most powerful question of all comes gently to you in the stillness of night. If you could care for yourself with the same intensity that you care for everyone else, what kind of life would you finally allow yourself to live?